Hello, and welcome to the Swamp Fox Valley Railway. My name is Joe Macaluso. In our last segment, we ended up talking about installing a turnout, cutting rail with Xuron rail nippers, installing a turnout undermount switch machine, which is slow motion, and installing DCC drops. We'll add the DCC bus at a later date over here and hook that up. Today we're going to talk about putting down the cork roadbed, installing block signal and detection. The block signals are over here. We'll be using pump pliers, markers, different screwdrivers, Xuron rail nippers, diagonal cutters, needle nose pliers, razor saw, rail joiners, insulated rail joiners, and connectors and wire strippers. Now, when we install the cork roadbed and you want to keep it center, you want to end up measuring across your foam roadbed to find where the center is. I've already marked the center lines. I've drilled where the block signals will be going here and here. And if you mark it, you can end up keeping and maintaining your radius throughout, and it won't be all geeked up if you did not. We're going to be installing a bridge in this section, which we have located right here. And now let's get to work. When you get your cork roadbed, it's usually already split for you. And all you do is fold it and then you tear it. But when you do that, clean the edges of your roadbed. And you get a piece of coarse sandpaper and just sand down the side to get all the boogers off it. So it'll look decent when you put it up, when you glue it down. That goes for both pieces. Let's see if I can show you how.
Only
rough
the inside piece? Only the inside?
That's the outside piece.
Okay.
This is the part where it was split. They cut it at about a 45-degree angle.
Okay.
So when you rip it, you know, you're going to have a rough edge because they don't cut it all the way through. This is Midwest cork roadbed. Now that pretty much takes care of that. You know, if there's a little roughness, that's okay. But on the whole, you want to get most of it off so you have a clean edge. I'll do that with 4 pieces. Well, actually 2 pieces, 4 halves. So we don't have to stop in the middle, and you can watch how it goes together. We're running out of room in the Swamp Fox Valley train room as construction continues. Please excuse my mess. But I'm sure everybody would sympathize with a larger layout and a lack of room. We would be here. Oops. Let's get that over the way a little more. I'm going to be using a flexible caulk Alex 230 clear. What you end up doing is write down, just squeeze a bead about that, like that. And then you're going to want to spread it out. You can use a putty knife, you can use a piece of cardboard, whatever you want, so you get a good even layer of the caulk. And like I said, I'm using clear because when it's all said and done, and when you ballast, and if you don't ballast your track real good, and you got spots that you missed, you don't want it to show, like if you were using white.
But you don't want to cover up your center line too much.
That's right. Yeah, yes, I'm going to end up putting it right across where the bridge is. We'll cut the bridge out before we lay the track, but after the roadbed is in. We use pins to hold everything in place, and we'll use some weight afterwards to hold the track down. Cork bed, roadbed is somewhat flexible. Get a little bit on the end, get it up in here. And my center mark, Put a pin in both ends. Use as many pins as you want to hold it in place. We have a minimum of a 22-inch radius on our main line. Now that the first piece is in, I'm going to end up adding one or two more pins here and there just to help stabilize it. You can use tacks like this, or if your wife sews, you can go steal some of her straight pins. Sometimes the straight pins are better because you can end up driving it down all the way through the foam and hit the plywood. We're going to add our other piece in. Let me get a little tack on here. And you see how it lays right up against the other piece of roadbed. So this piece will end up maintaining its radius. Mush it down. You can always clean off any excess. Now we've got our first piece in, and that's a 3-foot section of track. We're going to add another 3-foot section, and then we're going to wait for this to set, which will be a couple of hours, and then come back and cut out the bridge before we start laying track, because the bridge already has a rail, code 100, 22-inch radius curve, and we want to be able to join this section of track work to the bridge, and on this side of the track we will end up adding the trackage moving forward. So let's go ahead and spread out a little bit more Alex 230. And this stuff works pretty good. And if you mess up, the nice thing about using this method is, oh, I hope I didn't mess up my floor. I'll get that. Luckily it cleans up with water, folks. Where was I? I was telling you something and I forgot what the heck it was. But anyway.
If you mess up.
Yeah, if you mess up, you can take a putty knife and pry underneath here and just scrape off the roadbed and make the correction.
Might want to bring your pins over there.
You can always zoom.
I can't. I don't know how. Is that the zoom? Oh, look, I'm zooming.
Since this is where we're going to end, there, that's that. Next piece. And that's pretty much what we do with fastening and securing cork roadbed. I know in the past, us older modelers would end up using little track nails and stuff like that and hammer them into the plywood. With This technique, we can avoid nailing anything except, your sub base and your construction and whatnot. We will be able to come back later and we'll use the same technique to lay the track down on the roadbed. Then we'll end up painting the roadbed with Rust-Oleum primer. There is acetone in the Rust-Oleum primer, so you have to make sure you're far enough away and give it a couple of light coats, or else the acetone will eat your foam. Well, that's about it for this. Let's take intermission, and when we come back, we will be cutting out the bridge and installing it along with the track. See you soon. Welcome back to the Swamp Fox Valley Railway. In our last segment, we talked about how we were going to end up putting track down the roadbed, what we're going to do as far as putting a bridge in, block signals, and DCC. As you can see, I have the bridge in place where I want to mount it. I've already marked it, put rail joiners on it, and we'll move it out of the way. We will be adding track, cutting it, adding the bridge section in, and then continuing to rail the track from this point. So let me move this out of the way because we don't need it. Let me move the bridge out of the way, and you will see that I've already marked the section that I need to cut out for the bridge. When you're using power tools, be careful. They cut, they can end up throwing things around, and I'm not a good person at the moment for saying to wear safety glasses because I almost used it without eye protection. I'm going to be using my readers to protect my eyes, seeing as that they're polycarbonate plastic. Should have side shield if we were in an industrial situation. So, let me line up my saw. It's going to be a little noisy, and I have full control of it. When we're done installing the bridge and we start doing our scenery, we'll have bridge abutments. There'll be a gully here and I'll support the bridge off the scenery. But for now, we're just going to end up putting this in place and putting in our first piece of rail, which we're going to have to cut here. Let's make sure that the bridge fits and there isn't any problems. Oh, look at that. I'm so good I scare myself. So, we know that the bridge fits perfectly where it needs to be. Sometimes it's good to have a little play, but in this case, not. Now, when I prepare my track, some hobbyists will cut off a section or two of tie so they can end up feeding the track into the rail joiners and we don't have a problem. What I do is I'll undercut the ties and get rid of the joint, the spikes, so the rail joiner will slip in and I don't have to add that section that a lot of people cut off. let's see how that works. Okay, so I'm going to end up slipping my rails into the rail joiners of the track, like so. And if you can see, there's no need to add a tie. It's already there. Now what I'm going to do, so I can get the proper length, is I'm going to start pinning the center holes to hold the track in place and form my radius. We'll still manipulate it a little bit. So we get the radius, like I said, stay to the center. Stay to the center. That way you're following the radius that you laid out. Let me know, since this is flex track, one of the rails always move. So if we go back over to the beginning, here you'll see that there's a gap. What I'm going to do is I'm going to push the rail to close that gap. Something that you can end up doing. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to take my bridge. I'm going to locate it and see where I need to cut the rail. And I'm thinking right at the very, very edge here is where I want to cut it. So I'll go ahead and get my rail nippers. I'll pull the track back in line for the radius, and I will cut it. Remember to use the rail nippers in the correct direction, or else you'll have a chisel point cut. That takes care of that. Now let's see if we can manipulate our bridge into place. I'll pull out a few of the pins so I can hold the track up. Oh, and remember I was talking about undercut. I did have, here it is, right here. I hold my get right.
So you're cutting between the rail and the
ties.
ties.
That should give you enough relief to be able to get your rail joiners started and in place. And since I'm using plastic rail joiners because this is the beginning of another block, it might be just a little tight to work them in place. Come on. I know you can do it. And there we go. If I'm not happy with that radius, I'll pull it back, the track, that rail back a little bit to close up that gap. This is the new block section. And what we'll end up doing is we'll get about a couple of, I'll get a car or two and roll it across there. I'm not happy with that. That should kind of look like that. So we're going to be gluing this section of rail in place, and we're going to manipulate that. You can always file it so you don't have a sharp pick point or it'll end up derailing your train. So let me get my Alex Dynaflex 230, pull out several of the pins. We're going to lift this whole thing up. Squirt some Alex 230 in here. Spread it out. And then gently put the bridge section back into place. Now what I did notice was when we cut it, this moved, which ended up changing my radius. So later on, we're going to shim the bottom of this to bring it back over. And what I'll also do is I'll weight it, and like I said, this moved, and if we look at it real close, you'll see that after I move that and pull the track back in, I don't have that kink in the rail that I did before. So let's see if I can just go ahead and get that set right as the glue dries. That takes care of this section. What we're going to do is now we're going to carry on from here around the curve. Let me get another section of track. I got a bob. Once again, what we're going to do is we're going to take our saw, we're going to get up underneath the tie and the rail and do an undercut.
never cut towards your hand like that.
Listen to what she said, because this thing, if you rip it across, it's going to hurt. And then you'll have to have a Band-Aid. I don't think you'll need stitches, but we'll have that. I'm going to push the rail out of the way, so if it'll let me. Like so. I'm going to be happy with that. So we're not fighting with rail and Alex 230. We'll put the Alex 230 down now. Spread it out. It doesn't have to be super thick or cover every inch of the roadbed. Then we'll put our track back in. Now, if your rail joiners are too far back, you can always take a screwdriver and tap them forward. But before we get into anything of the sort, let's put our pins in to hold the track in place. Come try. I'm happy. Like I said, we'll come back and we'll put a shim underneath this block of wood that's cantilevering the roadbed. This will take about an hour to set up. Then we're going to end up running a locomotive after we spray paint and we clean the track. We're going to run a locomotive down here across the bridge to the end.
Okay.
Sometimes you got to end up, like I said, using weight. Okay, So that's for this segment. Let's have an intermission. Thank you.